Well, hey, BookTube, welcome back to the History Shelf, where I am thrilled today on this author interview to introduce to you Scott Edwin Williams, the author of the legendary Lightbulb Moments in History. We've got two volumes so far. We have the first volume is From Cave to Colosseum, and then the most recent one is From Peasants to Periwigs. And all I can say is these books are delightful. They have made me laugh. And as you can tell, I like history with humor. As George Washington said, hold my beer. He didn't really say that. But I love a good laugh and I love humor. And both of these books really were just a joy to read. So I'm so excited to have you on the program today, Scott. Thank you for joining us all
Oh,
the way from
Sydney, Australia.
there you
There
go.
we go. Yeah, I'm glad you found them funny, but they were meant to be serious, Peggy.
Oh, yes, of course. They're,
No, they weren't.
they are history. Um,
Yes, they are
but
history.
history with a little tongue in cheek. No, they're
Yes.
fantastic. Um, well, let's just introduce, you to
Yeah.
our viewers. Scott,
Okay.
just tell us a little bit of something about yourself, how what brought you here today.
How I am where I am.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, uh, currently I'm a middle school teacher. Uh,
Okay.
but prior to that, I'd spent 20 years in the graphic arts and in printing and publishing.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
that's a lot of that might inform some of the stuff we talk about later. I've a English literature history major. I got a
Okay.
master's in education.
Oh, wow.
But as far as history goes, because I did a little history at a university, but it began as a child for me. I was somebody who, like I guess many of your viewers, started out being fascinated with dinosaurs,
Oh, yes.
and then it just went from there. I mean, it went from paleontology to archaeology. So yeah, I was interested in the cavemen and interested in that. Then I worked my way through it all, kind of like how the books go, actually.
Yes.
Um, Kind of retracing my steps. Then, unfortunately for me, around about 13, I went down a rabbit hole with Eric von Daniken and all the ancient astronauts guys.
Mhm.
And I thought that was at that time was very taken with that. And it was only after I actually grew some critical thinking that I realized that that was pretty silly, that stuff. And that humans had done everything that humans, have done. And it didn't require aliens to
Right.
explain it.
Oh, right.
So
The
it
whole,
taught me about,
yeah.
sorry,
I'm sorry, the ancient aliens thing, right?
yeah. So that all taught me the value of evidence.
Yes.
Rather than just supposition. But yeah, so that's how I got here. I've been a history nut forever,
Yeah.
um, and I've read a lot of history. I've even history novels as well as nonfiction stuff. So
Mhm.
it's just a passion of mine. Like I'm sure like anyone who is looking at your channel, it's the same for them. It's very much the journey with a collective journey we've all been on, I imagine.
Yes. Yes. It sounds
Yes.
very familiar from to my own experience. I've always loved history. I never was a teacher, but I did want to be a history teacher at one point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just have a passion for it. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, so what made you decide to, what was your light bulb moment, Scott, when you said, I'm going to write a book?
Okay. Okay. Well, my path to writing a book was very long and tortuous. I had the idea of writing a book probably 30 years ago, but I didn't had no I wanted to write a book. I didn't know what I would write about. And I started off trying to write a novel, and it didn't work out very well for me because I'm far too an intrusive authorial voice. So a bit of a smart ass. I don't I don't I can't pull back. I can't a good fiction writer should be invisible. And I was definitely not invisible.
Mhm.
So I shelved that idea, and then I'd gone back to university to study a master's and did a lot of academic writing. And then after that all finished, I then thought, well, and all that I thought I was pretty good at this writing gig, and I wanted to try again. And what I couldn't find is my niche. I was trying to find something that I would be good at doing. But I'm a generalist. Like as a middle school teacher in Australia, at least, I teach everything. I teach every subject,
Mhm.
and that's who I am. I'm jack of all trades, master of none in some ways. But I always had that passion for history, and what I decided was, I write what you know. I'll write a history of education, which is how this book started out. And so I started writing that, and then realizing the part that really interested me was this collective learning. It was the part about how it was the history, the ancient history, and tracing how the big ideas of humanity's big ideas sort of snowballed
Mhm.
over the millennia, and how that it led all the way up to what was a pivotal thing in my life, the moon landing, because I was about 6 years old when that happened. And I sat up, well, didn't set up, but in Australia, it happened in the middle of the day. So we were at school watching it on television. So yeah, that was absolutely pivotal in my life, and I realized that the first caveman who picked up a stone tool, there was a line, there was a traceable line between that beginnings of technology and then what is one of the pinnacles of technology in the moon landing. So
Mhm.
so when I started doing that, I realized that in fact what I was interested in was not education as such. I was interested in the ideas, humanity's ideas, and that became light bulb. My light bulb moment was discovering that light bulb moments were the thing I was actually interested in, and what I was in some ways qualified to write about, because even though I'm not a academic, and I'm not a history professor. Um, Again, like so many of your readers, of your watchers, you would have they'd have a lot of knowledge from all the things they've read, and I have that. Plus, I have I guess this academic kind of bent towards following all that through,
Mhm.
and yeah, so that's how it all happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of really leads into my next question about like how you research, because I find it very interesting. I'm, as I am also not a professional historian, but I am an amateur and I read voraciously and I have all my
Mm.
life. So how did you approach doing your research? And I find it very encouraging to know that, more people like us could actually go out there, because I was looking at you through your bibliography and
Yeah.
you're very precise about that. So tell us that whole process.
It's a pretty eclectic bibliography. I don't shy away from doing internet research. I know, like a real historian. I don't ever regard myself as a historian. I'm a history nerd. A real historian looks at primary sources and does all the hard yards. I'm sort of basically plagiarizing their work, except I acknowledge it. Uh, but I don't. I will look at academic writing. I will look at YouTube channels. I will look at. I don't shy away from looking at Wikipedia. I've got lots of, like, my original research was all the reading I'd done up to when I started. Done so much reading. I had a lot of knowledge just
Mhm.
because of all the stuff I'd done. So I had a pretty fair idea of where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
Then it was just a matter of finding the evidence to support a lot of the things I was saying.
Okay.
And so yeah, I would, Google Scholar was my friend, but
Mhm.
yeah, so was, were lots of things that a real historian would think was terrible. Like I'm
Yeah.
sure real historians don't dip into Wikipedia. But when I did do things like that, I always was looking for other, like, things to back up the ideas I was looking at. So I was always looking for interesting stories, because this is not meant to be a history where it's all I mean, it's meant to be a factual history, don't get me wrong, but it's not meant to be the definitive history of all human ideas. It's meant to be an entertainment. So I was looking for interesting stories. I was looking for ways to make it funny. If I found a funny story, I didn't shy away from it. I
Mhm.
would also try to say, well, some people think this, but the other sources say that. But yeah, yeah, that was what I did,
Okay.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds good. And then you touched on this phrase before about collective learning, and that's what I really appreciated about your approach to both books. And And one of my other questions later on in the interview is, how many will there be? But
Yeah, yeah,
uh, I like, and especially in the first book, and you go into a very nice introduction and describe your moment with the moon landing, which I thought was just,
yes.
beautiful. Um,
Mm,
and you talk about, how do we get from here to there, and
yeah.
what ideas, bridge that gap. So when you were looking for stories, did you just kind of go back through your library and say, "Oh, I remember something about ancient Egypt that was kind of cool that I might want to share," or
Yeah, very, very much so.
okay.
Or I'd have a half remembered thing. I remember like say Cleopatra's makeup, the kind of coal makeup that they would use.
Yeah.
I had a vague idea that that was carcinogenic, and then I did a little bit of research and found that yeah, that absolutely had lead in it, and it was. So there were things that I had in the back of my head that would come out like that. Then
Okay.
there were other things I just discovered as I went along, like the sort of the temple prostitutes in Samaria, or just bizarre things that you just so different to our experience that yeah
Yes.
they just are funny just by even thinking about the whole idea. Yeah.
Yes, there was some stuff in here that I was like, wait, what?
Believe me,
Ancient
I said
Mesopotamia was a really funny one for me.
yeah, yeah.
But good.
So
It
yeah,
was like, yeah, there was some weird stuff going on back.
yeah, had some funny ideas.
Some funny ideas.
Yeah,
Well, now that I'm laughing and I'm telling you just a lot of these things were just, the history was delivered in such a delightful and entertaining way.
mm,
But I like how you address the use of humor also in the beginning
yeah,
of the first book. So I was hoping you might speak to that as well. You kind of touched on uh you know we live in a kind of cancel culture, and something that's funny for one person might not necessarily be funny for someone else. So
yeah.
do you feel comfortable just speaking into your
Oh, certainly
oh
do. Yeah, absolutely feel comfortable talking about that. I think, I mean, humor in general is a minefield. I think we would have grown up with people saying things as jokes that aren't acceptable now,
yes.
and I can understand it. I mean, I live in Australia, it's a very multicultural country. My partner is Chinese. I
Mhm.
don't have I'm aware of what is and isn't acceptable anymore. And there are things I would have said as a child. I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe I said that. In my book, I talk about my grandmother, who was just this lovely lady, but a terrible racist. And there are things that she believed that just wouldn't be okay now. But she was a product of her time,
Mhm.
and I think when you look at history it's there's a quote. I think it was J.B. Priestley. Uh, it's oh, I didn't have this in my notes. I'm sorry, but it's basically saying that the past is another country. They do things differently there. That's the
Mm.
quote.
Mhm.
So we can't look at the past and try to judge it by our standards. Now, as far as history, I'm going a little bit off track, but I think firstly you've got to, if when you accept that the past is different and there were things happening in the past that we would not accept now, you can't cancel the past. So then when you look at trying to make fun of it, you can actually look at those things and say, well, isn't this unacceptable? What thing that's so unacceptable now? This is what they believed, and you can make fun out of that.
Mhm.
Okay, and that's not it being insensitive. I know for a fact though that you were referring to my introduction, and I had to be very careful about saying I think it's paternalistic not to treat all cultures the same. So if I'm going to make fun of my culture,
Yeah.
and I do mercilessly, um, it would be paternalistic to say, well, I'm not going to say anything about Chinese culture. I'm not going to say so, and I don't say anything terrible. I think I'm quite sensitive about what I say, but I also don't shy away from if something is silly, I'll say it.
Yeah.
And I think to me, I think that's respectful in a
Mhm.
way. As long as I'm not doing it in a mocking way, I'm not mocking the culture. I'm just a particular idea, which I'm sure that culture would also probably think was a bit weird, because the same way we look at things from the past and think it's weird. I think it's actually okay to do that. I've had no negative feedback
No
on
negative
that kind of
feedback.
thing.
That's
I
great.
think potentially because firstly, I think I've done it relatively sensitively, when it's still been funny, I hope, but
Mhm.
also because I think the way I framed it at the beginning, like I think one of the last things I say in that section is, if I genuinely offend your culture, I'm sorry.
Yes, you do.
Because I'm not trying to do that. And I think maybe people who, if they read that part, might go, okay, well, hopefully, yeah, that's he can take that at face value. But my biggest fear about all that was I was going to have chapters that were like funny and taking the Mickey out of like the ancient Romans or all that kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
then have a like a holier than thou or sort of boring chapter about China or India, and that would be a really uneven kind of book. I needed to keep it the same tone all the way through.
All right.
And I just think that was what I needed to do. I had someone suggest that I should have a sensitivity reader, and I rejected that idea.
Thank you for doing that. Yeah, I'm not really
Yeah,
down with sensitivity readers.
no,
If,
no.
if you
So
can't handle reading something, then you've got bigger problems.
yeah, so basically, I was like, no. I think I prefaced it very carefully, as you referred, and I think the rest of it, I was just genuine, and I hope people took it in the way that it was intended, which was just like I can't avoid talking about certain cultures because every culture had some light bulb moments. They all had big ideas. I can't say,
Yeah.
well, we're just going to avoid talking about China because we can't. There's so
Right.
much that they invented and did, and
Yeah.
so yeah. Otherwise, I'm going to have a 10,000 word chapter that's all boring and sort of not not in the same tone as the rest.
Yes, this is definitely not that because it's just things like this just crack me up. Yeah, yeah. Ibn Battuta in Egypt, world traveler extraordinaire. Um, I just want to get across to my viewers how richly illustrated each book is with these types of imagery. With I'm glad that is your writing, right? You're the one putting in the captions for these
Yes, yeah,
cartoons. You've got
yeah,
a
yeah.
great sense of humor. But
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you about these illustrations and how did you go about choosing them? Because most of them they could either be like 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 a photograph or an ancient piece of artwork, and then you just kind of superimpose your own commentary on it, which is genius to me. But tell
Yeah.
me about how you
Oh, thank you.
decided to do this, the illustration part.
Well, it's funny. I don't know when I exactly decided to do it, but I think like I'm a bit of even though I'm of a certain age, I still look at a lot of things on the internet, and I think memes are like a part of the culture now.
Yeah.
So I felt that it would be good to have a book that not only had text that was amusing, that maybe incorporated some meme like illustrations. And I think a lot of those kind of old fashioned pictures, like I grew up with Monty Python's Flying Circus, and they were masters of taking old pictures and doing silly things with them. So I think probably the idea initially came from watching Monty Python. Um, and then I just think I decided it was a good idea. I might have done one or two and thought, oh, this seems to work,
Mhm.
and then kept on going. So
Wow.
it's it's sort of, I mean, I think some people might look at it and say I'm dumbing it down, but I would argue that a lot of those illustrations you wouldn't get the jokes unless you were someone who had a fair bit of historical knowledge.
Yes. I would agree with that because, when I first see like a book, a history book, and it's very illustrated and stuff like this, I'm like, oh, well, just because I'm more of an advanced, I've been reading history for so many
Mm.
years. But when I started reading through these and looking at the illustrations and your writing, I was like, yeah, these are actually quite sophisticated. This is like
Yeah.
sophisticated comedy. Um,
Oh, there's some poo jokes as well.
Yes. You're
Not many.
well, and like each chapter is just got the chapter titles are hilarious. I love how you named the chapter on the well, it covers a lot. Each chapter covers a lot, but we've got the Incans and the Aztecs and the sacrifices, and we've got Stop Dragging My Heart Around. That's stuff I appreciate. And
Well,
can
I'm
I,
nothing if not. I'm a dad. The dad jokes are my province.
and my partner is Irish, and I love dad jokes. I love making the obvious joke, and I make myself laugh. She cannot stand it. She's like, get out, just get out. Um,
Yes.
I wanted to ask just for a personal reference. Page 149 of your latest book,
Yep.
we are looking at Venus de Milo, the birth of Venus. And as she's saying here, I feel a little underdressed, and someone says Hussey with an E. Are you making a reference to Olivia Hussey, the
No,
actress?
no, there's not. No, it's not. It's not a reference. It may simply be a spelling mistake.
No, okay. I wasn't sure. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, did Olivia Hussey play Venus de Milo? I see how
No,
I really read into it.
I think you're giving me way too much credit for that one.
Okay, all right. Well, either way, I thought it was a serendipitous. If it was a typo, it was very serendipitous.
Yeah,
'Cause-
and it would be my typo as well. I can't blame anybody else.
Fantastic. All right. Well, we'll move on to my next question then. So what were some of did you find anything that was surprising during your research, or like tell us a story about something that you thought was really kind of neat about.
Okay, so the thing that I found that was really surprising, and like there were lots of surprising things. I think when yeah, you're saying that you were saying when you mentioned you were reading it going what. Most of the time, I was going what when I found it. Okay, but the thing that surprised me possibly the most is uh, there's a theory called the beer before bread hypothesis, and basically it's an idea that instead of humans coming together and becoming an agricultural society because they wanted to grow grain to make bread and to feed the populace,
Mhm.
that they were actually coming together to grow grain to make beer. And the fact that I mean, I love beer, so that to me that was quite a oh that's interesting. I mean, and I can understand why you might want to do that, but it to me that was like it was quite a. I mean, it's a theory. It's not proven historical fact, but it's certainly a theory that has some. It's not. It didn't come from. That's one thing that came out of a deep dive into Google Scholar. That wasn't sort
Mhm.
of somebody off the internet talking about something. So to me, that was really fascinating because to think that something that we regard as like a well, and it is the birth of agriculture is possibly one of the most important light bulb moments of all. In fact,
Right.
I'm getting ahead of myself here because you're going to ask me later on about some of my favorite ones.
Yeah.
That one is possibly the biggest because we would have got as far as we have if we hadn't come together in cities and we hadn't had people who were relieved of the task of growing food and hunting and all that and said there are people who became priests, became artists, became writers.
Mm.
And if those people hadn't existed, if everyone had been a subsistence, I can't even say it, subsistence
Subsistence.
farmers and or of hunter gatherers, we wouldn't have there wouldn't have been people to do those things. So we would never have got as far as we have. So as much as agriculture might seem pretty basic, it's actually one of the game changers.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that to me, but the fact that we had agriculture for potentially to make beer, that I found that hilarious.
Some things have never changed over the millennia, right? Like, do
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
I mean, obviously, we got beer on the George Washington's
yes,
mind, and
yep, yep,
it's been a part of our existence. So
yep.
that was one of your favorites, then, right? Was the
That
agriculture?
Yeah. Oh, look, there's so many. There's some funny ones. Like, I mean, the other one that uh,
Just gonna show your
in
books
the
again.
section about the Bible,
Oh
there's
yes.
the infancy gospel of St. Thomas,
Yes.
which is also hilarious because it's part of the apocryphal gospels. It's not considered to be part of the. It's not the part of the Bible, and it's not considered to be canon at all. But it's hilarious because in that gospel, Jesus is like a magical Dennis the Menace, and he does all sorts of weird things. He kills people, he strikes people blind, and not the Jesus we've come to know and love. It's
No,
someone totally different. So it's no wonder that didn't make it into the Bible, I think.
right. Yes, I really did find this. Oh my God. Yes, how to rebrand a deity before and after.
Actually, that
Oh,
that 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 illustration, the one you mentioned asked earlier about whether I had any pushback about sort of
yes.
cultural insensitivity.
Oh,
Uh, I had one review, and it's on the internet somewhere, and it was actually a guy who said, "I don't think Williams meant this, but the whole idea of comparing the God of the Old Testament to the God of the New Testament could be considered anti-Semitic." Now, that was the farthest thing from my mind. But
wow.
in that case, it was like, well, I'm just saying that the Christians have the Old Testament and New Testament. I mean, we talk about that as well. So I didn't see it as anything that
Hmm.
could be considered anything other than just sort of a general observation about, God in the Old Testament was pretty nasty guy, and then suddenly
Yep.
became all peace, love, and mung beans later on.
Oh, right.
But
Mung beans.
but
Mung
yeah, he was
beans. Wow.
yeah, but he was encouraging Abraham to sacrifice his son and then say, "Oh,
Yes.
jokes, sorry,
Yeah, I've
didn't
got that
mean
right
it."
here. What a great
Yeah.
stop. I was just kidding. God was just kidding. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that would be the one time you got a little bit of an
but yeah,
interesting. Yeah,
yeah,
I never would have considered that anti-Semitic, but
yeah,
because most people can make those associations, and they do, obviously every day they're like, yeah, people who are familiar with the Bible, that is,
yes,
it's
yeah,
like there's a radical difference between it and unless you've really studied, that the God of the Old Testament, very judgy, and
yeah,
then
yeah,
you've got Jesus in the new, and that's all lovey-dovey.
yeah, yeah.
So,
So yeah, that was yeah. So definitely the infancy gospel of St. Thomas. That man, I was aware of that before I wrote the book. I was desperate to work that into the text. So, but so it wasn't something I discovered, but it's something that's always when I read about it the first time, I thought, oh, this is pretty funny because you know having been to Sunday school and done all the things that you do,
oh
and
yeah,
then suddenly learn these stories about Jesus where he was less than perfect. I mean, it was just ridiculous.
yeah, yeah. Um, well, so with each book, so far we're showing the first volume, the first two volumes here. The first book went from like prehistory, and did you have a natural stopping place? I know by the end of this book, you're like, look, I didn't mean to end on the dark ages,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
on the low
But here
point.
we are.
Um, but is it a natural, like, okay, I think this is where we end one book. We have enough for one book. Like, how do you decide what goes into each one?
Okay. Well, initially, I envisaged this as just one book.
Okay.
It wasn't going to be this what's becoming, bigger than Ben Hur. And then I realized at a certain point that there was no way that I was going to get what would end up being a 200,000 word book published.
Yeah.
So I had to find a way of dividing it up. So I then went, okay, well, look at the familiar uh, sort of eras that we have, and okay, it seemed to make it as much as the fall of Rome and this quote unquote dark ages aren't quite what we have been led to believe. It did seem to be a natural sort of demarcation line to stop it. So I basically went, let's stop it there, and then I can restart with the dark ages, well,
Okay.
the Middle Ages. Okay, we don't like calling it the Dark Ages anymore because lots of reasons.
Right.
But even so, I mean, for instance, it may have been a Dark Ages in Europe, but in fact, in the Middle East, they had all this knowledge and they were developing lots of knowledge. So that's why people don't call it the Dark Ages anymore, because there's places in the world where it wasn't dark at all.
Right.
We had to re-import all the knowledge back from the Islamic countries,
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, that was sort of seemed to fit for a break. It was the right number of words, and it made sense to stop there.
Okay.
Again, it wasn't down. The other thing is the thesis of the book is that whilst humanity is building growing knowledge and we're gradually getting better, not necessarily in like all the time. It's like the stock market. There are corrections, there are falls, but generally it's a long-term sort
Mm-hmm.
of growth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I view history. Now, that's, I think, a bit of an old-fashioned way of viewing history, because people think that, oh, well, history isn't the story of unbridled growth and we're always getting better and better, because look at the world now, look at all sorts of things happening in the world now that are less than wonderful. And a lot of people look back and go, weren't things better in the Reagan years or in the 1950s or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think what I'm saying precludes there being little setbacks. And then we
Yes.
just, so I mean, I always regard, as much as there's lots of things that have happened since 1969, I still look at the moon landing as like one of the pinnacles of science.
Yes.
And so we haven't got there yet again. We're heading back there. But
No, we
yeah.
haven't. But I'm curious to know, and I'm just gonna, kind of go off here and throw you a curveball. So why do we have people who still doubt that there was a moon landing? I mean, do you have any? It just boggles
Well,
my mind, because it was the pinnacle of human like ideas and achievement and human genius to find a way to
yeah.
get to the moon, and then we have people that are just like, oh no, that was all faked.
Well, it's insane because the number of people it took across America to put together the technologies to do it. As there are thousands and thousands of people involved. It wasn't just this cabal of people in NASA making up some story. There were the people who, built the lunar module, people who built
Yeah.
the rocket engines, all sorts of things. But the thing that I think is the most telling is that if America had claimed to have gone to the moon, wouldn't Russia have said they didn't do it? If they could
Yes.
have proved it, wouldn't they have gone, that's rubbish? Instead, Russia gave up. They realized they'd been beaten in the space race. And
Mm-hmm.
so to me, that's the telling point.
Right. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus I believe that there's no code of secrecy that would ever
No.
there's someone would have,
Oh, absolutely. There are
gone
leaks
out
out
there.
of political campaigns. There are leaks out of everywhere all the
Yeah.
time. I
And
mean, there's no way they could have kept that secret.
there's no way. There's no way.
Mm,
And I feel the same way about the JFK, the assassination too.
yeah.
Just just as an aside. Um, but if I could circle back real quick, I realized I wanted to ask you about the categories that you use, your domain system, um,
Yeah.
which I thought was really interesting, and you kind of lay it out for the reader early on. But for our viewers, I thought if you could talk about, you categorize your light bulb moments in 4 domains.
Yeah. Now, I kind of preface this by saying this is not like rocket science. I haven't come up with this grand theory of everything that explains the world. It's basically just something to help me organize my thoughts. But I thought I would mention it just so that people would see where I'm coming from.
Mhm.
Basically, I've divided up into STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and maths. All those ideas fit into one bucket. Then there's religious ideas; they fit in another bucket, and um, like that goes, all different religions all fit in the same bucket.
Mhm.
Education, because education, without education there is no collective learning. Education is a massive thing.
Right.
And that's just cultural ideas, political theories, things like art, sports, narratives, all those things fit into the culture. Now, I'm sure that someone could divide those things up into 8 different domains or 10
Yeah.
different domains. I just felt like they made sense to me. They're not based on anyone's theory, they're based on just my ideas. And then what you can do is that there are some ideas like well, this is obvious because it's in the name. Religious education is in religious and educational. The two domains come together. Or
Hmm.
things like Stonehenge, like my hat here, um, they that's religious, it's
Yep.
cultural, and it's science and technology. All those things come together. So
Oh,
they
neat.
they don't have to be sort of um, divided up. They can be used together. They can one idea can like the say we don't actually know why they built Stonehenge, but say it was a the Druids decided they please can you make us a building, then the certain other parts of the society would say, okay, well, we're the people who can make that happen. So let's drag these rocks and do these things, and how are we going to do it and solve the problems and that.
Hmm.
So yeah, so that's basically all it is. It's definitely not meant to be some uh like theory that it's supposed to be earth shattering, because I just don't take myself that seriously. It's
Right.
more just a
Okay.
way of just for me to organize it in my own head, and then I thought I'd share that in the book.
With the reader. Okay.
Yeah.
Got you. Okay. Um, so we have volume one and we have volume
Yep.
two. Are you working on volume three?
I am, but
Okay.
I also have another couple of projects on the go, because I just came back from 5 weeks in UK and Europe, and basically visiting a lot of the sites that I've talked about in the books.
Okay.
And at the end of last year, back in October, November, I spent 2 weeks in China, also visiting Great Wall, going to see the terracotta warriors, all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
So
cool.
I've got an idea for another book, which is going to be kind of like basically Lightbulb Moments World Tour kind of thing. So
Okay.
I've done a lot of work on those, taking a lot of notes, writing a lot of, doing a lot of planning and things. Uh, Having said that, I'm also halfway through the second book, or third book, sorry. So I've really got to focus now on which one I'm going to do first. There are some personal reasons why I might, or personal and professional reasons why I might not do the next Lightbulb Moments book first.
Okay.
Um, but I also, because I'm like halfway done, it seems silly to not finish it. So I'm basically having a little bit of a like existential crisis at the moment as to what I should do.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, I am working on both, but like I think I need to focus now, and I've got to actually do that. So maybe this interview will give me the impetus to just go out there and finish book 3, and then I can go into my other
Yes.
project. Yeah.
Yes. And so you're thinking the other project could be like the world tour to kind of encompass your travels. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
basically, and not necessarily, even though it is related to the idea of the book, not necessarily be part of the series. Rather, it would just be a standalone thing,
Oh,
and uh, yeah, it would. It's kind of hard. It would be half travelogue, a bit like a Bill Bryson kind of thing, with
oh,
travelogue,
yes.
but also then delving into the history of the places I've gone to. So
Hmm.
that sort of thing. So I'm actually I'm definitely going to do it. The question is, and like I don't really want to divulge why I'm hedging on the third light bulb moment book, but basically, yeah, it may be a bit of a thing to give me a bit of a break to get some professional stuff in line. Yeah,
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I was curious to know if you might do some like other type of writing. Do you feel like you might go back to a fiction or historical fiction or
I don't think I have that in me.
okay.
I don't think I could do it and be convincing. I think you've got to know your limitations. In my think, I think I'm relatively good at what I do, but I think if I tried to write fiction, I know when I tried to write fiction previously, it was quite laughable. So so, so I think, I
Yeah,
might leave fiction writing to the people who are good at doing that
right.
because
Fair
it's not
enough.
my thing. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit about your branding here. I'm loving your hoodie.
Okay. Yeah. Hoodie. And I got the hats and everything. Yeah. Look, as a part of that, like as I think I said, I came from a graphic arts background. So
Yes.
I came up with all the branding, all the like when I was looking at the meme things, I was photoshopping them all together. So that was
Nice.
something because I had that skill. I was able to do those things. And yeah, like I mean, basically these have been for me. I don't expect the world to go out and buy my merchandise. It is available on Redbubble, but it's not what it's there for. I put it there basically because it was a cheap way of getting them produced, and I think the only people who've ever bought new are me.
Well,
But,
I love hoodies and it's
yeah,
wintertime and I love wearing history gear of any
yeah,
kind.
yeah.
So I might be your second order on Redbubble.
Well,
That could be
please feel
me.
free. Excellent. If I sell one, I'll know. Yeah, so that's something I did like that just for me, like to wear in situations like this.
I
I
love
have
it.
so much of this stuff walking around with it. Um, I've got a few with some of the memes on the shirts, like yeah, so
Oh,
yeah,
fantastic. Oh,
yeah,
I might have to get one of the because I do love some of these the memes are just
mm,
hilarious.
mm.
Um now so now you mentioned another a portion of the work that you've done in these books that I didn't even realize. So you've designed the book jackets then, yes?
Yes, yep, it's all of the
You've
covers,
done
everything.
all of
Yeah,
this work. That is
yeah,
amazing. Um,
yeah.
in addition to being a teacher, like how do you find the time for all this
Oh,
stuff?
that's what my principal asked me.
He's like, what are you doing in your classroom, Scott?
No, I
Yeah.
basically would come home at night, and after everything was organized, I'd obviously plan my day for school the next day, and then
Hmm.
sit down at about 8:30 at night and just write. Or if the muse didn't hit that day, then I would fiddle with some of the meme create the memes,
Yeah.
or even I've got a YouTube channel where I put up a lot of um advertise, basically like book trailers and things like that I've
Yes.
created.
I think I
And
found your
I
channel.
fiddle,
Yeah.
yeah, I found also like weird things like I've been using AI music creation and like I now I've got songs, with lyrics for the, that
Oh
that
my.
that go along with the memes and all the things, and or I have like
Can I just show that I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to let that speak for itself. Is that the AI?
No, that was
Oh,
I didn't no in book one there was no AI at all.
oh, okay.
It was all
Book
created
two.
with stock art and me fiddling with it in Photoshop.
Okay.
In book two, I did discover AI art, and I did use some as AI art, some are still the sort of iStock or Adobe stock photographs that I've bought and
Okay.
then edited. Uh, I've actually, as much as I enjoy the AI things, which they're great because I find there's no photograph or there's no artwork of a historical character doing a particular thing. I can
Right.
ask AI to create that. Now that's fun and it's good, but um, it's almost like cheating. So
Well,
So even though I have used AI in book two, and there are a few in book three so
oh,
far.
okay.
Um, I I'm not sure that I want to go. Every time I look on YouTube or look I'm just seeing all this AI art, and it's starting to get a bit generic. I'm actually seeing
Mm,
illustrations similar to the ones I've generated coming up as in YouTube sort of thumbnails and things like that. So it's making me very, it doesn't seem very original. When it doesn't
yeah.
seem original, then I don't want to do it. I really
Yeah.
would like to be as original as possible. And I think if I'm producing sort of work, that people have either already seen or are about to see somewhere else, then I'm not sort of interested so much in that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will use I will I'm not going to shy away from using it, but I may use it in moderation.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting to know. I did notice a few of the memes had like in the caption AI, and I
Yeah, I
wasn't
did.
sure what I was reading there. I'm like, oh, did AI inform this somehow? So I'm really glad you explained that for me on here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would put in a prompt saying if I wanted, Julius Caesar picking his nose, then I would, you
Okay,
know, I
gotcha.
will put that in there because there isn't a picture of him doing that, surprisingly. Things like that. When
Yeah,
it
darn it.
isn't available, but a lot
Yeah.
of the time it's actually better to go back to like I quite like the old sort of medieval woodcut style illustrations.
Yes.
I think they've got a certain charm to them,
Mm-hmm.
and I've you can't generate those reliably on AI, and I actually quite
Right.
like the originals, and some of them are funny on their own,
Mm-hmm. Oh,
just
they
the
are.
original without any messing around with them. So yeah,
And then you have these, which I think you just did take off of like iStock or something, right? Or
yeah,
iPhoto.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yeah,
It's out of progress. Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
yeah,
This is good stuff. So, I mean, you can see Monty Python runs through here.
yeah.
At the same time, really good and well-written history.
Thank you. Well, I was hoping. Look, I really want to the idea of my target audience was people who are interested in history but who wouldn't necessarily read a Susan Weiss Bauer or something like that was a bit more serious. That
Yes.
would they'd be interested. It might spark them to look at other stuff. Like ideally, it would be great if someone read the book and went, "Oh, I want to know more," and then look for some more serious person's work. I mean, I
Yes.
think I would like it to be like an entry level thing for certain people,
Hmm.
but also think there's something in there for people who are real history buffs. And like I said, some of the jokes or the allusions in there, you wouldn't get them unless you had sort of a fair bit of historical knowledge.
That's true.
Yeah.
I can attest to that, viewers.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
so I would suggest if you are in that former group that Scott talks about, like someone who's kind of newbie approaching history,
Mm.
this is a great entryway in. And I would suggest that people read them chronologically, right? If
Mm.
you're not
Yeah.
just kind of know those big eras of time, whereas the rest of us are kind of aware. This makes good for, you can jump around if you're aware of
Yeah.
your basic history. So you kind of know how time and history kind of flowed in this direction. But for folks new, I think just reading these in chronological order is helpful. But again, if you're
Mm.
more well read in history, you can definitely just kind of pick and choose. And I
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
it's it's a great experience. So
Yeah.
any time frame on well, we don't know yet, right? Because you're still trying to work on volume three, or we're trying to urge you in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think if I get my act together, it could be out sort of mid next year, the
All
third
right.
book. Yeah. Um, it is, and originally the third book was supposed to be the last book,
Okay.
but as things have turned out, and I don't think this is something I discovered, and funnily enough, it actually backs up what I'm saying in the book, but it was a discovery I made as a result of writing, is that you know the ideas in history are speeding up because of collective learning. So the first book covers millions of years from in fact, the non-human animals all the way
Right.
up to the end of the fall of the Roman Empire. The second volume is basically from the Middle Ages up until the scientific revolution. It's
Okay.
about 1,000 years.
Right.
Book three is going to be cover about 200 years. So
Okay.
because with the way things are going with science and technology, uh, knowledge is growing so quickly that in fact I can't fit it all in. If I tried to write three volumes, after having finished the first two, the third volume would have to cover every idea from sort of the industrial revolution up to the internet. and
Yeah.
that's just not going to work. So
Right.
I need to sort of spread it. I think it's going to take at least 5 books to really finish it properly.
Hmm.
And it's actually borne out. There's something I mentioned in book 2, and it's about Buckminster Fuller's idea that for up until about the 19th century, beginning of the 19th century, human knowledge, the body of human knowledge doubled every 200 years. And then by 1945, it was doubling every 25 years.
Wow.
Okay. And when he wrote this in 1982, his idea, it was doubling every 12 months. So the whole body of human knowledge. But it's now conjectured that human knowledge doubles every 12 hours, the whole
Oh my,
body of human knowledge. So
my God.
it's just snowballing. I
Yes.
mean, in theory, I could never catch up, but I will because I'm just going to have to cut it short in some ways. But I couldn't tell the stories in the kind of detail that I do if I tried to just jam it all in. So I'm going to like I'd say book 4 could be 50 years,
Wow.
and
Okay.
then there's a certain point where I might even have to go to book 6 or something. It really depends on um, firstly how they continue to sell, and secondly
Hmm.
whether I want to like I said I want to write this travel history book, and I would like to get that done while it's all still fresh in my mind, even though I've got lots of notes about what I've done.
Right.
I would like to get it done sooner rather than later because when those like I've in the last or within the last year I've seen like the Terracotta Warriors, the Great Wall,
Hmm.
Stonehenge, Rome, uh,
Wow.
basically, and like all the in London, everything around London, all this stuff. And it's really there's so many stories around this. So basically, a travelogue which also branches out into the stories about where I've gone to. So so it's a then and now kind of thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. So, but that's yeah. So I'm a bit torn because when I did all that traveling, oh, this would be a great book. And I've always been like really loved Bill Bryson style things. I like his travelogue kind of sort of stuff, and I
Yes.
liked his science and his not so much history, but a history writing.
Hmm.
So that it would be right up my alley, and it would be something that would be interesting to do, I think, for me as well as hopefully interesting to read.
Hmm.
But it's I'm tossing it up at the moment. So certainly book 3 like is half done, and I could probably finish it within
Okay.
6 months or so. Yeah.
Well, and tell me too, how are the books doing? Like in Australia and just everywhere? Well,
Okay. Let me. Can I be really honest?
yeah.
Not that well.
Oh, no way. Oh.
It's okay. One of the reasons I think that I'm hedging about book 3 is I'm not happy with things that have been going on with the way they've been promoted and distributed,
Gotcha.
and I'm looking at other options.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So possibly, um, yeah, I need to really think about that seriously. And I was hoping that the whole travel book idea might be a bit of a palate cleanser
Hmm.
while I'm sorting out the other stuff because I think I've man, they're not sort of natural bestsellers, but I think there's an audience out there for them that that hasn't been tapped, to be honest.
I think there is too. And that's why I really
Mm.
wanted to take a look at the books and talk to you because like you, I think the reason why I have my channel is because I want people to be to become as interested in history and learn as much about history as they
Mm.
can. And sometimes you come from a place where you haven't really read history. So where do you start, right? And
Yeah,
so I thought these were both just um they did capture the light bulb moments. I thought you didn't really miss anything there. Um and it was so well written and engaging and again funny. So
yeah. Thank you.
and they're just beautiful. They're wonderfully produced, and you did all the work. So I'm just here to
Mm.
say, everyone, you need to check these out.
Yeah, I think, like I said, there's something there. I think, and it's a matter of the promotions hitting the right audience.
Yeah.
There are, and there are loads of um, podcasts, like history podcasts that are history humor.
Hmm.
It's how I and I've obviously authors, like traditionally published authors like me or self-published authors have to do their own promotions now um, that the publishers don't do as much as they used to do. That's
Okay.
just the way it is. That's the world.
Yep.
But there's only so much, particularly with the kind of margins. Like in a self-published book, you can get quite big margins if you can sell them. But in a traditionally published book, the margins are very, very low.
Yeah.
And it's just not worth me spending my own money to promote them, which is what you have to do.
Yeah.
Or just, yeah. And yeah, so it, the, yeah, so that's why I'm rethinking my whole strategy, to be honest.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm here to support you because I love the books. So
Thank you.
I'm a cheerleader.
Yeah.
Um and yeah, so let's see what we can do as far as getting the word out there until maybe you
Mm.
can change your situation with that.
Yeah.
But I just think they're wonderful books. And so
Yeah,
book
and
two.
for those people who like listening to audiobooks, I do have an audiobook, which the audiobook was self-published because the publishers didn't take up the rights to the audiobook, so I created an audiobook. I actually didn't read it myself. I got someone to read it for me, but it's a
Oh,
it's a well-produced audiobook. It's available on Audible. It's available on Spotify.
okay.
Uh, I it's I make more money out of that. But also, yeah, it has a like for the people who are interested in the illustrations are available in a PDF that's downloadable. So it's all out there.
That's
But I
excellent.
mean, for people who want a book on their bookshelves, by all means, I hope you might have a look at the first one at least.
Take a look at From Cave to Colosseum, Lightbulb
Yeah.
Moments in Human History. And then don't forget also to check out From Peasants to Periwigs. Can you tell me really quick again what a periwig is for our viewers?
Okay. Okay. Periwig are those funny little wigs that okay. Can
What
you
we got here?
see? Can you see?
Oh
That's
yeah.
Captain Cook. That
Yes.
thing he's got in his head. That is a periwig.
That's a
Okay.
periwig. Okay.
Yeah. A bit like George Washington would have worn one as well.
Yes, that's
Those.
right. I just called them
Yeah.
wigs, Scott. I don't know. I didn't know they were called
Yeah.
a periwig.
Well, they're also called perukes, and they're the
Perukes.
things that they're the things that okay, if you're in a British barrister,
Yeah.
they wear those in court as
Oh,
well.
right.
Still. Yeah.
Right. I remember the funny scene from A Fish Called Wanda when John Cleese
Yeah.
is running around trying to grab his to go to
Yes.
court. Yeah, his periwig or his
Yeah.
peruka. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Peruke. Yeah.
Peruk. Peruk.
So
All
yeah,
right.
they're and that was just they all the and that's the origin of the term bigwigs
Oh, I
because
love
all these
learning
go
these things.
yeah,
Right. I love
yeah,
learning like the origin of phrases and that's
yeah,
one of them. Bigwigs. Gotcha.
yeah. So
Okay.
they all had these mass because you see pictures of Isaac Newton or Christopher Wren, and they all have these massive, not just ones like this. This is quite uh,
That's
a
tame.
modest one, yes, but they had these massive ones, and they're the big wigs.
The
All
ones
the
that
people in
really
this,
tower, right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Scott, for taking time to be on the history shelf with me.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh,
I really
yes,
appreciate it.
it's been my pleasure, and I hope to have you back no matter what type of book you're putting out. I think I'm going to be
Okay,
interested in.
good,
But
fantastic.
BookTube, I really encourage you to check out Scott Edwin Williams's work. They can find it anywhere, right? Amazon,
Yeah,
Barnes
it's
and
anywhere.
Noble,
It's Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's out wherever good books are sold.
wherever
But
fine books are
probably,
sold.
but probably, and this is part of the problem. It's probably not in the physical bookshop. This is part of the problem. Is they're not even though they should be available in physical bookshops, they are not usually. It's usually going to have to be online. I really like supporting bookstores. I think
Hmm.
the old sort of local bookshops are wonderful, and I love going and looking around. Well, unfortunately, that's not available in most of those. You may be lucky, but
Yeah.
basically, it's going to have to be ordered online.
Yeah, ordered online. And do you have a website that you? you
I do.
maintain or
I
you'd
do.
like people to go to?
Well, yeah, I don't sell them there, but
Okay.
www.lightbulbmomentshistory.com is my website.
I will
So yeah,
include it in the description box below for our,
fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, if you there's all you can get there, you can sign up for my newsletter, all that kind of stuff. It's
I think I
exciting
will.
stuff.
Um, well, and I hope you and I stay in touch though, Scott. So
Yes, yeah, it'd be fantastic.
I would love to stay in touch with you. I think we could talk history anytime and have a lot of
Yep,
fun. Um,
absolutely.
all right. Well, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for joining us here at the History
Thank
Shelf.
you.
And
Thanks, everybody.
yes, until next time.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. Bye, Peggy.
Bye-bye.